and the individual really does have the power to change it. But sometimes we just need a little help to have someone else be the witness and help facilitate that process for us to see what it is that maybe we've had a blind spot to, and then we can change.
We are here today with Hanging Out with the Practitioners with Mary Von Olen. You specialize in helping people in addiction recovery and helping coach them and guide them and doing healing services for them. And that's one of your specialties. If you'd like to start off with what has inspired you.
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me on, Stephanie. I love what you're doing.
Mary.
It's an honor. What inspires me? That's a great question.
Or what inspired you from the beginning of your journey?
I think what has inspired me from the beginning is always any opportunity to empower people via awareness, just raising someone's awareness in any area that can help them improve their life. So early on, reflecting back when I was in my teens, I had access to knowledge and services around nutrition and chiropractic, some of the physical healing modalities, and I remember how much they helped me, and I realized how effective they were. And it seemed so much like common sense to me, those approaches, that I was blown away as I started to realize how few people utilized them, and how many people just went kind of the mainstream medical route, and often with not as much success. So I really got turned on by helping people that I saw were struggling and saying, hey, you know what helped me? Your issue might be biochemical or structural. Maybe you need to see a nutritionist. Maybe you need to see a chiropractor or something else. So early on, I was inspired just by the effectiveness of the holistic world. And as I got a little bit older and went through my own journey early on in early adulthood, my education was in psychology, so I gravitated more towards the emotional and psychological aspects of health. And so I was drawn to the holistic aspects there, holistic techniques there, like EMDR, which taps into the brain's ability to rapidly process trauma and other negative emotions. And then my journey of, I thought that I was going to go on and probably become a psychotherapist. And as fate had it, I was supposed to develop some other life skills and experiences that would help me to be able to provide my own personal experience with addiction recovery to help others. So you mentioned that is one area where a lot of the people that I work with, not all, but quite a few of the people that I work with these days come from that realm. People in recovery from some type of addiction, or on the flip side of it, maybe people who have family members who deal with that family illness. And over the years, I've studied all different types. I've had the opportunity to study all different types of holistic techniques and modalities from the physical realm, the emotional, the spiritual. And so really I function more, I would say, kind of as really like a life coach today, but that brings a holistic tool bag of different techniques and tools and knowledge that I can pull from, that I can draw from, to help guide people through whatever transition they're going through in their life, whether it's in their recovery or at whatever stage that they might be struggling with.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that sums it up. It's tough. It's tough to explain all in a short answer.
Yeah, but it's like you have your I don't know, you have like a holistic background in treating yourself.
Yeah, thank you for summing it up like that. That's really what it's about, is that in my own early recovery from alcoholism, from active alcoholism, I found that I felt like I really had an advantage having this knowledge and access to and awareness of different modalities that really just helped make the process a lot more smooth. And I felt like it improved my chances of success, because if you don't know much about that, the field of addiction recovery, it's, the statistics that you hear can be a little disheartening. And actually it's something that's absolutely treatable and manageable, but it can be complicated or it can be misunderstood because there's physiological aspects to addiction. There's emotional and mental aspects, and spiritual. And so I think it really makes sense that I have attracted a lot of clients over the years from that realm, not only because of my personal experience, but because if you look at it as when people tend to come to holistic practitioners, sometimes it's because they're struggling, they're in pain, right? With some type of physical or emotional or some kind of issue. And they are open to trying a new way or a different approach. And with folks that have already embarked on they're in recovery or at some level, some stage of it, they tend to realize that they have an illness that affects all those different aspects of well-being. And so they tend to be more open to, oh yeah, it does make common sense to try different, to apply physical techniques, emotional, spiritual.
Yeah.
So makes sense that I would attract those folks, and that they'd be open to the types of things that we do, that the practitioners, any practitioners that are listening today, if you don't know about addiction or you don't have a background in that, doesn't mean you can't help people in this realm. But it's good to know that we have each other. So I would like to just say, if there's anyone out there and it's not your forte, but you find that you're attracting clients that you sense that they have some issues in that area, please feel free to reach out to me just to consult if there's ever any way I can help. Because sometimes it, what just came to mind is takes one to know one, but not takes one to know one. That really, if you've had that experience, sometimes only someone who's been there can really access that level of trust to help people realize the next step in their journey, or have the courage to take the next step to get help in that realm.
I think so. And then that leads us to our next question. Do you have any stories that you would like to share with one client and how you've helped, or any clients, and how you've helped some little different stories of someone?
Sure. I'll speak in vague terms or, non-specific.
Right.
But what comes to mind right away, and I feel like it's a theme this week, well, a couple different things. One is helping people move through grief. And sometimes it's something obvious where, you lose a loved one and it's sudden or unexpected or expected, and it's just a significant individual in your life. And sometimes it's with addiction recovery, it's interesting because I think everyone on some level experiences a degree of a loss of self, right? So loss doesn't have to just be about a death of someone. It could be a loss of a relationship, loss of a job, loss of your sense of self. So I think that a huge component of working with, well, really anyone, but still focusing in on this addiction recovery discussion or theme that we're talking about today, focusing in on it. Grief is big. In the beginning, when people put down a substance or a behavior that they've had an obsession and compulsion with, and has become their, really almost like their best friend, but also their worst enemy because it turns on them, so to speak. It's like a loss, and you have to kind of grieve that coping mechanism, as dysfunctional as it was. There's a grief process that goes on. And so later on in recovery, I experienced other life events that caused grief, and being able to draw from different holistic modalities really helped me get through that with I think far greater ease. I mean, it's never easy, right? But far greater ease and effortlessness than had I not had those additional tools. So I bring that up now because you asked about stories, and I mean, even just this week, I've been helping someone in recovery who just experienced a sudden loss, and was able to just introduce a simple, technique like emotional freedom technique, EFT or tapping, which I've had advanced training and certification in, to be able to just get through those stages of grief and incorporate the mind and body in the process. Now that's speaking generally. Let me talk about something more specific that just popped into mind. So another client that I've worked with who was in their first year in recovery. So imagine they're, a number of months clean and sober, but a little bit older, having going through a number of different physical struggles. And the challenge of, in the past, turning to pills. Opiate addiction is a major dilemma in our country in particular. So working with a client who was is clean and sober, but then was really struggling with the physical, the aches and the pains, and feeling like his body is not recovering as fast, perhaps, as his mind. Being able to tune in and work with him again, EFT comes to mind, where I could help the client come to their own sense of awareness of what might really be behind the pain. You know, what's really behind that physical pain? Because it's not all about just what was done physically to the body. And we were able to work together, and he could come to this place of realizing that really there were some emotions behind it, some things that needed to be grieved, and some beliefs, you know, some thoughts about himself and about the world that contributed to him manifesting those physical. You know, I remember talking to him about Louise Hay, you know, who was certainly a pioneer in our field of self-development and the ability to heal oneself, and that there can be thoughts and emotions behind why are we vulnerable to manifest physical struggles and challenges in certain areas and not others. You know, so if you've got back problems, perhaps you're not feeling supported. You know, I had a client that was talking about not being able to got all these problems in their hands and having trouble. Oh, I think I can't handle things. And so we were able to, that's like a doorway as a practitioner and a coach to then delve into utilizing one of the techniques to help then work together in partnership with the client for them to raise their awareness. Because, you know, in summary of all this, really, I've learned that healing comes when we can suddenly see something that we couldn't see before, right? So if it's subconscious, if what's holding us back or causing us to struggle is subconscious on some level, if we're not conscious of it, how can we change it? And the individual really does have the power to change it. But sometimes we just need a little help to have someone else be the witness and help facilitate that process for us to see what it is that maybe we've had a blind spot to, and then we can change. Those are the things that really excite me when you see the client have that aha moment. Oh my gosh, that's profound and simple, really.
Yeah, yeah. So what's our next question here? Because I was listening. Where have you evolved to now with your work?
So great question. We're always evolving, right? Always in our own transition, I think. Learning more. Healing. Yeah, always healing. Journey. Yeah, doing the self-care work is crucial. You know, you hear about it in the addiction recovery realm a lot, maybe more in the Al-Anon, families of dealing with addiction, where they talk about it's really important to put the oxygen mask on yourself, you know, like they talk about on the plane before you try to put it on your child or someone else. And so as practitioners, it's so important that we really engage in our own self-care. As you know that, Stephanie. I don't have to tell you that. Sometimes a challenge for us though, right? Because we love helping people. We need to slow down and make sure that we're clear, because then we'll be that much more effective, right? In my own evolution now, I kind of mentioned it before, I'm mostly functioning as a coach and a guide, and working more with focusing more on quality than quantity, I guess, in terms of how many clients I'm working with, trying to work more in depth with fewer individuals than try to see as many people as possible. I used to have office space where I would see people in downtown Westport, and it was relatively busy. And some clients I go to them, like the client I was talking about recently, in early recovery. Some people need some extra help, and I've found that as a practitioner, it can be really interesting and more effective almost. Just bring in a different dimension if I go and work with the client at their home. So that's not always possible, but for me locally, I have gone into people's homes in Fairfield County, Connecticut here, and you just get a more holistic, a more full sense, broad sense of what's going on in the person's life when you see really where they spend most of their time. Yeah. And shift the energy and help them shift their own energy there and in their space. There. So I'm doing some of that, and then also distance clients. Some clients that I've worked with locally, and then they've moved or gone on to college, for example. I love working with young people. That's the other kind of demographic, if you will, that I love to work with, that age group, teens and young adults. I think because it's been a few years now, but I remember pretty well what it was like to be that age. And if I then had the tools that I have now, I just can only imagine the difference that it could make, and I see the difference it makes in the young people that I'm working with. So with the clients that I work with now, primarily, other than the ones that I go to their home, I work like, just like we can use technology to do these great interviews. I use this technology to have one-on-one sessions with clients. Sometimes they're in the next town over now, and we speak like this, and the connection is there and it's effective. Watch part 2 of this interview where I talk about working with young people and what it means to be a highly sensitive person.